Всех приветствую и рад видеть на офлайн и онлайн части моего доклада. Меня зовут Дмитрий Купин, и тема моего доклада «Сквозь туман кибер».
And I will talk about navigating the fog of cyberwar, a review of APT Cloud Atlas attacks in 2023-2024.
Я решил выбрать эту
Why
тему.
the subject?
Дело в том, что данная группировка в связи
This
с геополитических
APT group, because of geopolitics, mostly attacks Russia, Belarus, and other CIS member states. And it poses real threats for the business and government organizations. Understanding the tactics and methods of this group is important to build appropriate security against it. And a few words about myself. I have been in cybersecurity in 2013. I'm head of analysis of malicious codes at Department of Cybersecurity with F.A.C.T. I also teach at the Bauman Technical University at Information Security. I write research papers. I presented at Cybercrime Con 2021 and Kazan Digital Week 2021. And I participated in the 10th issue of the podcast Cybersecurity Facts. The plan of my presentation is as follows. We'll look at the profile of Cloud Atlas to refresh in our memory who they are. We'll talk about potential targets. We'll look at the activity timeline. We'll discuss the tactics, methods, and procedures of Cloud Atlas. I will show the relevant attack chains. And then I will proceed to security recommendations. Okay, let's discuss the Cloud Atlas profile. I decided to look at them using the diamond model. It consists of 4 apexes. The first apex is the attacker. They are Cloud Atlas, that's a pro-government cyber group that engages in cyber espionage. They have many alliances. You could know them by the name of Inception or Inception Framework, Clouds, Werewolf, Clean Ursa, etc. This group has been active from 2014, but it is also known that this group could originate from a previous group, Red October. And if we proceed from the assumption that Cloud Atlas equals Red October, then their first activities dates back to 2007. Who Cloud Atlas attacks? The victims are Central European countries, Asian countries, industry, diplomatic institutions, and more recently, attacks aimed at Russia and Belarus. The infrastructure that the attackers use. Often they use overseas registrators and hostings. They use legitimate cloud services such as OpenDrive and CloudMe. According to Semantic Report of 2018, the attackers used compromised routers as proxy chains. To obtain the payload, the URLs to malware files, some unique paths are used. Opportunity or capabilities. What capabilities the attackers have? They use OLE documents that contain in the one table stream a link to download a template. They use RTF files with shellcode. They use their own unique malware such as Power Shower, VB Shower, an inception framework. They also use malicious HTA files, scripts, batch, PowerShell, VBS, and Python. And because this is a diamond model, we can see links between attacker and victims and infrastructure and capabilities. This helps us discuss aspects, the social political aspects. Motivation is political, purpose cyber espionage, and theft of confidential data. And they like using the geopolitical agenda to develop the scenarios of their attacks. And the technical aspects, they use some technical know-how, such as they like targeted phishing as the initial attack vector. They use template injection. For some reason, they exploit old vulnerabilities such as 2017 11882 and 2018 0802. They use WebDAV to communicate to cloud infrastructure of other compilated modules at post-exploitation. They also use whitelists to make it difficult to investigate subsequent stages. And currently, they started using alternative data flows of NTFS to conceal their activity. Who are the targets of Cloud Atlas? We had telemetry from public services such as VirusTotal, AnyRun, and we received samples from our internal cases. We built a map of who was attacked by that group. And it happens to be 3 countries, Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. Cities mentioned in this slide, that information was obtained from telemetry analysis. And you can see there's also Crimea and Simferopol, but I will talk separately about Crimea later. There are no Kazakh city, and I will also talk about that a bit later. And in terms of industries, in 2023-2024, energy, military, research institutes, food industry and other industry, geological exploration companies, and of course the public sector. Okay, now a comment on Crimea. There's a file on VirusTotal. We can see that it was uploaded from Russia. And if we look at telemetry, for some reason it was uploaded from Moscow. Okay, let's look at this malware document. There's a reference to federal law number 44. There's an abbreviation, and in brackets we see some additional procedures.
Что ж такое? А можно назад? Вот. Начинаем это гуглить.
If we Google it,
смотрим, что такое СМРК.
Let's look at what this abbreviation means. And that is the Council of Ministers of the Republic of Crimea. If we go to the official website of the Republic of Crimea, if we were to look for decree number 154, and if we open it, we can see that there's a link to law, federal law number 44. So this gives us an understanding of who this document targets. Even though it was uploaded from Moscow, most likely it targets organizations that sit in Crimea. Regarding Kazakhstan, there's another document uploaded from Russia, and the source is an account of an individual or a group authorized at VirusTotal. The file was uploaded, if I recall it correctly, from Moscow, and so what we can see in this malware, we can see a reference to the law on government procurement dated 21st of July 2007. If we were to Google that, we would see a lot of information related to Kazakhstan. And if we open that law, we can see that it only exists for Kazakhstan. Hence, the assumption that even though this document was uploaded from Russia, but it has a direct relation to Kazakhstan, and most likely it was targeting organizations in Kazakhstan. Let's now look at the timeline of activity of Cloud Atlas. Because we didn't have any compiled samples,
дату первого появления образцов.
we took as the timestamp the date of the first appearance of samples on VirusTotal or in our internal cases.
Светленький квадратик — это мы нашли один файлик,
The
встретился один раз. И темненький квадратик — это мы обнаружили более
lighter box is we found one file, or the darkest box is that we found more than one file.
июля 23 года.
In July 2023, for some reason, there were no samples.
В 2024 году
In 2024, in April and May, we didn't observe any activity either.
с возможностями компаний
Well, clearly, this is related to the capabilities of companies.
Теперь давайте разберем с вами тактики, техники и процедуры.
Let's now look at the tactics, techniques, and methods of Cloud Atlas.
В техниках под
Let's talk about the techniques of preparing for the attack.
в самом начале.
What the attacker does initially, they gather information about the victim, they do intelligence,
Злоумышленник пытается получить адреса электронной почты.
they try to get the email addresses of the victim to which phishing emails would be sent. The next step is preparing resources for the attack. They prepare infrastructure, register domains
Переносных нагрузок
for
для командных серверов.
placing their payloads or command servers.
Скомпрометированные почтовые адреса
Attackers use previously compromised emails
компании.
to carry out targeted phishing campaigns.
Resource development.
Continuing on the resource development tactic, let's look at a number of techniques. The Cloud Atlas
Собственно, вредоносное поле.
can develop their own malware,
VB-Shower, например.
such as Power Shower,
Также злоумышленники
VB Shower.
вредоносные документы RTF,
They
которые
also use malicious RTF documents that exploit CVE 2017-11882. Most likely they have some weaponizer to generate these files at scale.
электронные почтовые аккаунты.
They also create emails at popular services such as with Yandex or elsewhere,
Регистрируют
and
свою инфраструктуру для того, чтобы
Cloud Atlas
какую-то вредоносную нагрузку.
register these to further
Структура была
promote their malicious payload.
23-24
This network infrastructure was identified during 2023-2024.
слайдах.
I have this table on 2 slides.
Можете ознакомиться. И переходим с вами к тактикам.
Let's now proceed to the tactics and techniques related to their attacks. Let's first look at the initial access.
Cloud Atlas используется
Cloud Atlas use
вредоноса, они
targeted
вредоносный attach в виде
phishing,
документа, обычно с расширением doc.
and they normally use a .doc document.
Так. И разберем с вами примеры этих.
Let's look at examples of such phishing emails that we have been able to identify and neutralize using our security system.
Обнаружение сложных неизвестных угроз. Факт Managed XDAR.
That is called F.A.C.C.T managed XDAR, which can detect unknown threats. This is an example of an email sent from a compromised email address of an organization. The
Беларуси, Китай.
subject talks about cooperation between Belarus and China, and there is a malicious document attached. The next example, the attackers sent an email from a registered, an address registered, an address that they had at their disposal, and this is a request of help related to the special military operation. You can see that the email is signed by a director of a drone company, Phoenix.
Ассоциация развития изучения беспилотников.
And indeed, we can see that
Романенко Дмитрий Юрьевич.
such an organization exists, but the CEO is different. And the contact details also differ.
Последний пример.
And a final example,
Использовали тоже
the
зарегистрированный почтовый ящик.
attackers used their email on mail.ru,
Постановка на воинский учет.
and as subject they used drafts and mobilization,
К тактике execution.
a very hot topic in Russia these days. So let's now talk about execution, the next phase. The attackers used the following techniques. I decided to
Command and scripting
put
interpreter.
together three techniques. First is command and scripting interpreter, PowerShell, Windows command shell, and Visual Basic. Cloud Atlas uses PowerShell to launch a malicious HTA file. They also use a batch file to create and launch a PowerShell script, and they use VBS scripts to launch their malicious components. A continuation of this tactic, there's a number of techniques that exploit vulnerabilities. We know that Cloud Atlas abuses CVE 2017-11-882 in Microsoft Office. They use COM and VMI objects in their VBS scripts.
Смотрим с вами технику user execution malicious file.
There's also the technique user execution malicious file,
Запустить непосредственно
whereby a user would have to launch a malicious file to start the compromise chain.
На данном слайде представлены
This slide discusses examples of implementation of such procedures
Windows Command Shell,
of Windows Command Shell, PowerShell, and Visual Basic. At the top, you can see the contents of the bat file that creates a PowerShell script and launches it. And at the bottom, you see a fragment of an HTA malicious file responsible for the launch of scripts from alternative streams of NTFS file system. This slide shows an example of how attackers use COM and VMI objects. You can see that they get objects to work with the registry and launch processes using VMI, and they get class ID from MS XML to server XML HTTP 6.0. This slide shows an implementation of an exploit of the vulnerability. At the bottom, you can see the paths to files that are launched and the links to which they refer. So when a malicious document is opened, they try to download a malicious template, and then the exploit of the vulnerability occurs in an equation editor of Microsoft Office, and it tries to download the malicious HTA file. And here's how they build the content for their malicious files. I put together a list of where they get their inspiration from. They use various pieces of legislation, they use news from the media, they use information from specialized sites, they use excerpts from research papers, whether from open or closed repositories, and they can develop some unique content, maybe based on previous attacks. Let's look at fake legislation, or pieces of legislation. They can use information from Consultant Plus, legal database, etc. Here's how they take information from the media. Here we can see a piece of news with the heading and the contents. They would copy the piece of news and reformat the text, or they take the news report and only copy it partially for the document. On the left, you can see the malicious documents, and on the right, you can see the source from which they could. They probably took the information. Let's now look at how they take information from various sites. This is a malicious document which uses as a decoy some table. If we were to search through documents to find a similar table,
заявление на пропуск, на въезд в закрытый город Саров.
There's a request to obtain access to the closed city of Sarov, and perhaps the attackers used that table and used it in their documents. Yet another example where they take information from. There's a malicious document targeting Belarus,
Автобиографию.
and they take an autobiography of the Lieutenant General Lapo from the Border Control Committee of the Republic of Belarus. And the photograph they could take from another website.
Фрагменты научных статей и сборников.
Excerpts from research papers.
Документ вредоносный.
We
Соответственно, там был заголовок.
received a malicious document with an interesting header and some content. We searched this header and we found out that this is a research paper. This is an excerpt from the research paper from a closed repository. Well, it's not confidential, but you get access
Сборник, он принадлежит военной академии.
through a certain procedure. And this excerpt is from the support military academy named after Krulov. Here's another example. You can find the original document on the web, but the content of the malicious document has been modified and is not a word-for-word copy from the original research paper. Let's look at self-made or unique documents. On the left, you can see the decoy related to the energy sector of the CIS member states. In the middle, you have something related to the Donetsk People Republic, and on the right, you have a decoy targeting Belarus and the recent election there.
Теперь рассмотрим с вами тактику персиста.
Let's now look at the persist tactic that Cloud Atlas use. They
Ключ реестра RAN. Ниже представлен слайд примера, как это
get
происходит.
into the system using the run key in the registry, and the slide shows how it happens. They create an entry in the run
Теперь рассмотрим с вами
branch of the registry.
defensivation.
Let's now look at the defense evasion tactic. The attackers use techniques such as deobfuscate, decode files or information.
Для того, чтобы
They
расшифровать
use XOR
нагрузку.
to
Используют
decrypt their payloads. They use alternative NTFS data streams to conceal their malicious activity, and they do indicator removal
очищается содержимое этих файлов.
by opening write access to files and wiping out the files.
Defensivation продолжаем с вами рассматривать.
Let's continue defense evasion techniques that they use.
Двойного расширения.
They use double file extension.
Вредоносный batch файл.
We had a malicious batch file with an extraction .pdf.cmd, obfuscation of files or information,
Cloud Atlas. Они
encryption or encoding of files. They obfuscate malicious HTA files and VBS scripts.
легитимные
They also use legitimate applications such as NSHTA to launch malicious HTA files. They use HTML injection,
различные временные задержки.
template injection,
Затруднить анализ вредоносных.
and use time delays to make the analysis of malicious code more difficult. This slide shows examples of these procedures applied. On the left, you can see the obfuscation of the shellcode using XOR.
Представлен фрагмент деобфусцированного.
On the left at the bottom, you can see an example of a deobfuscation without a script.
У вас представлен
On the right,
HTA файл, как он есть.
you can see
Видите, что как-то там.
an as-is HTA file. You can see that it's encoded, obfuscated in some way.
На данном слайде представлен пример
This slide gives an example
использования альтернативных потоков данных.
of using alternative NTFS data streams
Расширение
double file extension, time-based evasion,
удаление, соответственно, файлов.
and file removal on the right.
И последние примеры
And
по defense evasion.
final examples on defense evasion using MS-HTA to upload a malicious file. And on the right, you can see the contents of the file. Sorry, at the bottom. On the right, you can see template injection.
Представлен пример, что происходит, когда пользователь открывает этот документ.
And at the bottom, you can see what happens when a user opens the document.
В тактике discovery, то есть
The discovery techniques.
или на системе. Злоумышленники пытаются найти
The attackers
процессы в системе.
try to find certain processes in the system.
PowerShell скриптов у них осуществлялся.
And we saw that when using PowerShell scripts, they were looking for winrar.exe and cmd.exe, and they also gather system information on the target. They try to get the domain name and/or if your computer is not in a domain, they will look for the host name of the target. They add this information to the header and send it to the command server. These are examples of implementation of these procedures.
Как происходит поиск процессов WinRAR-CMD?
The search for WinRAR the WinRAR and CMD processes and information gathering about domain
Переходим к тактике.
is also shown on the slide. Let's proceed to the command and control tactic.
Протоколы, то есть HTTPS для того,
The attackers use web protocols such as HTTPS to talk to their servers.
дополнительного ПО извне. Это Ingress Tool Transfer.
They use ingress tool transfer to download external software, and also they use internal proxy.
Пример реализации этих техник.
These are examples of these techniques applied. Web protocol I'm not showing because it's straightforward. Top left,
Внутреннего прокси.
you can see the use of internal proxy. They first do a check,
И справа снизу представлен.
and bottom right,
Могут подгружать что-то.
you can see a screenshot of downloading some external content and writing it to the disk drive.
А что еще может делать?
What can Cloud Atlas do after compromising the system? Well, that was the full skill chain. We didn't see the post-exploit situation. But we know that we have data for 2022, and we can extrapolate them for 2023, 2024. In 2022, there was a research paper by a company called Checkpoint, where they point out that there was a document published on VirusTotal from Donetsk with information about an incident response in some government authority.
На данном слайде представлен
This slide shows a fragment of this document. I've highlighted in red bars
а именно сканирование
the most interesting examples. These are scanning of internal network, finding the domain controller and attacking it, archiving the data of interest.
также могли создавать учетные записи.
Attackers could also create accounts different from real
Один или два символа.
accounts in the domain that only had 1 or 2 character differences.
Протоколы
They also used protocols such as RDP or SSH to connect to the servers and hosts. And they also used advanced port scanner with a Russian language interface for some reason.
легитимные тулзы.
And also legitimate tools such as FAR, Python, Chocolatey, AnyDesk, etc. And as they penetrated the network, they
Записи о наличии
searched for entries on connection to cloud service, such as OpenDrive and CloudMe. They also continued to brute force the routers maybe to use them in proxy chains, and also opens ports.
Теперь разберем с вами актуальные цепочки атак Cloud
Now,
Atlas.
a few words about the kill chain.
Вариант у нас был
There are two options here. The first one was discussed by our blog. You can see the QR code to get there. So now let's have a look at this kill chain.
злоумышленники отправляли жертве
The attackers sent the victim a phishing email with a malicious attachment, which had a document with a link to the one table stream, and this link downloaded the RTF document with a shell code, and it was executed by abusing the CVE 2017 11 something vulnerability.
Что делал HTA файл?
So you can see here, CVE 2017 11 882. So what did the HTA do? It generated INI or XML files and a lot of malicious scripts, and they also have some obfuscated data there. So this is the payload file, and this is .con and .xn. It added a VBS script to autoloading, and the other one, inc.vps, was launched. And this VBS script was responsible for decrypting and giving control to the payload which was in the data file, con and hxn. Then it was further decoded. Then they created an empty file. And this VBS script then tried to launch the next stage, which was also a VBS script. And to the left, you can see this in a VBS. This was responsible for reducing or removing itself and for cleaning the VBS content. Here you can see the HTML file. Here is what it looked like. This slide shows in more detail what we have discussed. Here you can see links to the files. So they added to the autoload the VBS script from the alternative data stream. And here you can see how they launched these VBS scripts. VBS scripts were in alternative data streams of the Haki XML files. Here you can see the examples. And here there are some details on these VBS scripts I mentioned when I was discussing the kill chain. So the asterisk inc APS was identical to Haki VBS. What did it do? It decrypted the payload from the data file and launched it. To the right, you can see elements of this script. This decrypted Haki HXN content is shown here. So this was decrypted and launched as payload. So this is the payload which was supposed to download some final payload we couldn't get because it wasn't available when we had our investigation. So this is a long script, so I have split it into 3 parts and I made it readable. About empty files. For some reason, they used the on-error resume next approach, and after the condition for the presence of the file of no zero size, they will run this code, which means that you should open the file, read, send the post request to the server, and all of this should be done in the record mode, so you just zero it. So you make an empty file this way. So it can be a marker or a bug. This is the VBS script responsible for deleting the content. So we deleted the content of the VBS scripts, and it also emptied the content of the temporary files catalog, the ones downloaded from the internet, and it also did it in the record mode.
Рассмотрим с вами второй вариант.
Let's consider the second option. It's very similar to the first one. The only difference is the beginning. What happens before the HTA file is downloaded. So we don't know the initial vector of this zip archive, but say a user receives a zip archive, and there is a file there, PDF.cmd, so it is launched. Then you have the PowerShell script. Then the zip archive is loaded. There you have this bait document in PDF. PowerShell opens this bait to distract the victim, and then the batch file is deleted. So here you can see the zip archive. It was created in November 2023. This batch file creates a PowerShell script and launches it with this command. PowerShell script is designed to launch the next stage, or load the next stage using HTA. So here you can see the formatted version of this PowerShell script to read the code. But unfortunately, we couldn't get the bait file. It wasn't available. How did we see the second kill chain? How did we detect it? How did we restore the HTA file? You know, once in the Caribbean Sea, we had a faulty rule for the CVE, and we were interested in the comment. So Ukrainian someone with this IP. Okay, let's have a look at the archive, and there we can see this file with a double extension and a section of dropped files. We'll have a look at the VBS scripts in the alternative diversity data streams. We go to the box in Aristotle. We can see the file sum with HTA. We try to find it. It is not there. What shall we do? We decided to download the RAM and have a look at the files. We had 1,600 files there. So what shall we do? We should find the beginning, the end, and the missing part. Have a look at the similar HTA file from the previous cases, because we had the data, and so to combine this stuff together and to control the hash sum to see whether we got what we wanted. So we didn't have when grep, and we were lazy. That's why we decided to write a rule to find the beginning, the ending, and the missing part. So this is the Yara rule. So this is the beginning of the HTML file from one of the dump files. Here you can see this is the end of the file. And this is the end of the HTA file, and we can see that there is some garbage there and the VBS code. Oh, okay. Here is the beginning. Okay, so this is the complete HTA file from the previous case, and the beginning we have found. So we looked at the missing part, and we decided to use this line for search. It is highlighted in red here. So we have found a missing part in one of the dumps. So we glued it all together. We counted the hash sum, compared it to the analysis in that box, and the hash sum matched. Okay. What are the recommendations? So we know that Dmitriy has these tactics, procedures, and they also have mitigation and detect suggestions. And these mitigation methods to reduce the risks from threats can be applied to the techniques we have discussed.
Соответственно, есть у нас тактика.
Okay, so we have the tactic of initial access. Now we know that we have the target phishing, so spare phishing attachment. So what do they suggest? Using an antivirus, using the IPS systems, restrict web-based content, software configuration, and user training. For the execution tactic, it's more or less the same, and I should mention the PowerShell. We have there the use of signed scripts, removing software from the system, and also managing privileged accounts. And we should also mention that we can prevent execution, and we can also do behavior prevention when we see some anomalies with the end host. Okay, let's continue with the execution. So here are the techniques, exploitation of vulnerabilities. So we understand we do sandboxing, we do isolation of applications, and what are the other measures we can use for COM objects, and they might also isolation. We also manage privileged accounts. And for the launch of malicious files, we are talking about user training, preventing launch, and preventing behavior at the endpoint. Matra, for instance, doesn't give any measures for persistence through wrong key or the startup folder. So this is persistence and privilege escalation. And in defense evasion, so in defuscation or decoding of files or information and hide indicators or indicators removal, they don't have any suggestions either. So the use of TTPs, the alternative data streams, for instance, they say that we should restrict file or directory access for masquerading and double file extension. They suggest operating system configuration and user training. Okay, let's continue with defense evasion. For obfuscated files, so we use antiviruses, behavioral analysis, for the use of MSHTA and other legitimate things, removing or disabling some features for template injection. They also suggest using antiviruses and also user training. And for time-based evasion, Metro doesn't give any advice, nothing for discovery either. For process discovery and for system information discovery. And for command and control for the web protocols, loading of software, malicious tools, the use of malicious proxy, so we can use IDS, IPS, which is logical. What are the conclusions we can draw based on all this stuff? Okay, Cloud Atlas is still doing cyberespionage. In 2023-2024, they primarily attacked Russia and Belarus, and also we found a possible attack in Kazakhstan. We have identified Cloud Atlas malicious software almost every month so far, but they are getting, so we are not seeing them anymore. They're using spare phishing, and they're also using some old techniques which are still useful, and the group is trying to modify them. In this case, they tried to use some alternative data streams. And to protect from this type of threats, you should train users, update software, and keep track of vulnerabilities, and use the standard protection, things like firewalls, CMs, EDRs, antiviruses. So no rocket science here. That's it from my side. I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Насколько часто и как часто сотрудники
How often do security staff get in touch with these ATP groups, and do they invite them to their teams? Well, I deal with the ATP threats, and you know it's quite difficult to be in touch with these groups. But if we talk about cybercrime and other guys who are just looking for something lucrative, well, I'm not sure it's often happening.
взаимодействие с атакующими, оно есть.
Okay, we have interaction with the attackers,
Но в плане частоты сложно.
but I'm not sure about how often these contacts happen.
Изменялись ли тактики и техники?
Have the tactics and techniques evolved through the year? Did they make the kill chains more sophisticated? Did they come up with any new techniques? Well, as far as I got it, you're talking about the Cloud Atlas group here. Well, no, they haven't made their kill chains more sophisticated, and these scripts you have seen, so I think it is VBS shower. It was described by Kaspersky Lab in 2019, and they're still using these standard tools. The only difference is that they started using alternative data streams. And if you compare the kill chain, the first one I mentioned, and if you look at the Positive Technologies report called Unbroken Chain, I think, it's on Cloud Atlas, published in 2022 after the Checkpoint publication. And there they also had this VBS scripts, the PowerShell, and the guys managed to have the compiled binaries at the after obfuscation stage. And you can see they are still using the old CVE. So it's not clear whether it does its job on the victim's side. So when they used phones for phishing, they used social engineering, did it help their attack? So it's not clear whether there was a connection. But when you have this in the phishing message, this is likely to increase what? Yeah, to increase the level of trust from the victim. Like, it seems to be okay. So there are some details. So they introduced themselves. They said, thank you. They gave me the phone. I'm not going to dial because I'm an introverted person. And as we know, they sent these letters to somebody else like, please open this up. I couldn't do it. What do you see more often? The compromised email, or do they swap the email addresses? Well, usually they have already email addresses. Compromised addresses are more difficult to come across because you need to hack the victim and then use this for your attack. But usually this increases the quality of your cyber attack. So if you email from a legitimate box, you go through all the checks, and your email is more likely to make it through, and it will not be blocked, and the victim is more likely to open your malicious file. Okay, Windows Management Instrumentation. How does it work? Is it the question? Okay, this is a standard Windows mechanism. Okay, you can find some references in the internet. In this case, they used calls to VMI objects so that they can use it in the code, so that they can deal with the registry through the VMI object, and their process is launched.
Вот, то есть вы это могли сделать не в VB-скриптах, например, в
So
PowerShell.
not in VBS scripts, but in the PowerShell or in the batch file.
То, как злоумышленники формируют вредоносный документ.
Is it that important how they make their documents? So why do you think the source matters? Will we be able to understand the tool they used for copy-pasting this? Well, I think that if you are an investigator, it's really important to kind of imagine yourself in the attacker's shoes. Try to get into their mind and try to understand whom they're going to attack. And the examples I have shared, the documents were from Russia initially, but we also found some content which is related to Kazakhstan. And there was another document related to Russia, but it turned out that the target was the Crimea. Well, I mean, for SOCs, you can exchange this information with the other SOCs and just let the guys know that your region is most likely to be under the attack from this group. Apart from that, you can tokenize the text, and you can try to find these things, but I think you'll have too many false positives because they take the data from the open sources. But you can develop a model which will identify the text character, say if it is political or business related, and this can be a metric for your future detection. Who knows? Do they have any kind of special style? Yes, indeed. These are the documents with an table stream. We have another group using it. I think it's APT 28 or Gamorregion, one of them. Well, we have one pro-Russian group also using one table. So these are the only guys doing it. And they also use unique malware. We haven't seen anything like that apart from them. And so the Yaris work fine here, and there are no false positives. Okay, hello. Do you have any scoring for priority incidents which are not processed by a robot? I don't think I can answer this question. I don't know. I work in threat intel. Hello. The trends are changing. Can we add a language model to analyze the incident data? Well, for the ML, what are the approaches we can take? I'm not a big expert in this field, but this is still interesting. I think that indeed you can use it. Okay, no further questions. Okay, the best question. Yeah, those who asked the questions. Are they here, by the way? Okay, you will teleport to the present, won't you? Good. One table is the stream in the document. You have zero table. The guys from Positive in 2022 described the data structure in great detail, so how it all works. So you can have a look. So these are some technical details I